We started researching out keywords again and noticed that there was about 8,000 people a month typing in the keyword property management Utah. And so I got thinking, well, why not start free property management Utah? Ultimately, I determined that I loved the marketing. I loved the creativity behind it. I loved learning about SEO. I loved learning about Google Ads. I loved applying all these different campaigns. And I kind of liked being a maverick a little bit in the industry. I loved that most real estate agents were going out of business in droves. We were making really, really good money. I am a classic example of somebody who had no idea what the hell they were doing, getting into a business that they knew absolutely nothing about and didn't belong in, and frankly, getting my ass kicked. Hello, friends. I'm Adam Loveridge. Welcome to the Home Services Marketing Podcast, Growth to Acquisition. I'm the owner and founder of Job Calls. We're a home services marketing agency specializing in heating, air conditioning, plumbing, and remodeling contractors. For more information about Job Calls, visit us online at www.jobcalls.com. Welcome to the Home Services Marketing Podcast, Growth to Acquisition. For the last 13 years, I have been helping contractors really elevate their business online, generate massive amounts of lead flow, and many of whom we've actually helped to successfully exit their companies. I've really designed and built this podcast to help to share my experience as a marketer and also as a business owner and entrepreneur, because I have a passion for helping contractors. I have a passion for being of service. And ultimately, I would love to see anybody who listens to this be able to take this and find those nuggets, those actionable ideas and thoughts and strategies that they could take and implement in their business, regardless of where they are in their business today. So whether or not you're one man in a van or running a 100-truck plumbing outfit, I want this to be able to be something that you can use to really take your business to the next level, whether you want to turn around and ultimately be acquired, or maybe you're just looking to generate, generational wealth for you and your family. But regardless of your reason for being here, this podcast is going to be all about value and it's going to be all about growth. From a personal perspective, I've started this podcast because, like you, I too own a contracting business. I own a remodeling company called Allied Contractors here in Lehi, Utah. And for about the last 3 years, we've been really employing all of the marketing strategies and ideas and different things that I talk about and utilize for the contractors that I serve in my agency. But I'm in this place where I get to now actually be in your field. I get to experience the same challenges that you're experiencing, and I get to go through the same hiccups and strategies. And so part of the reason why I've put this podcast together, beyond being able to be of service to contractors, beyond being able to help contractors grow, is for my own learning process, both as a marketer and entrepreneur, and also as a construction company owner. So the reason that we're calling this the Home Services Marketing Podcast, Growth to Acquisition, has to do with some of my personal experience as a marketing agency owner. I've worked with several clients over the last decade plus who have ultimately, as we've done an incredible job with our marketing and we've helped them grow and helped take them from 20 trucks to 40 trucks or 100 trucks to 150 trucks or whatever the scenario was, one way or another, we've made them prime targets to be acquired by private equity companies. And then I've watched as a couple things have happened there. Number one, we get fired by the private equity company. And so for unintentionally helping our clients, grow and set themselves up in a place where they can exit for a nice, 8-figure payout in many cases, it's ultimately meant that we end up losing the client. But more importantly, and probably the most important factor is that what happens when a private equity company comes and buys a HVAC company or a plumbing company or something along those lines, in my experience, is they come in and they start to immediately apply their formula to that particular company. The problem is that company had their formula that was working for them before, and not all businesses are created equal. And I'm tired of watching private equity companies come in and bastardize the thing that made these companies great in the first place, fire off all the vendors who ultimately helped that company grow to the point that they were in a position to be acquired. And candidly, I think most private equity companies out there really don't know what they're doing. And so I want to arm you and empower you with the knowledge and strategies that we use to help our clients get positioned to sell, but to make sure that you're not going to get taken to the cleaners, and that what you've built and the culture that you have built and the operational systems and the people, frankly, that have helped you to make these companies successful, that all of that stuff is going to stay in place, and that you really are going to be creating a business and a brand that will survive into perpetuity and provide value for the stakeholders, and not just the private equity stakeholders, but all stakeholders, right? Employees, staff, vendors, customers, who you do business with, that those people are all taken care of, and that your brand gets to exist far out into the future, regardless of whether or not you get acquired by somebody who thinks they know better. So a little bit about my background. I've learned how to do marketing and search engine optimization and Google Ads and all these different things when I started my own company. So I had been working on finishing up my MBA. And I think, like most entrepreneurs out there, I felt like I could do it better than my boss. I was tired of working for somebody else and making them rich. And I really just had this idea that I wanted to go out and I really wanted to test the limits of my own capacity as a human being and also an entrepreneur, frankly. And so, with a little bit of money in my pocket, a nice degree that frankly really didn't mean much of anything, and a lot of hopes, I decided that I was going to go be a professional real estate investor. And I started my professional real estate business called Clean Slate Homes. We were going to go out and help people in foreclosure, do a lot of fix and flips, that sort of thing. And we started that business, or I started that business rather. When I say we, it was really myself and my ex-wife, but we started that business in March of 2007. And maybe you can remember, but there was this very monumental thing that happened in March of 2007, and that is the subprime mortgage market collapsed. So I am a classic example of somebody who had no idea what the hell they were doing, getting into a business that they do absolutely nothing about and didn't belong in, and frankly, getting my ass kicked. And my first 2 years of net operating losses exceeded $185,000. At the time, I was spending probably $6,000, $7,000 a month in direct mail, trying to acquire properties, either to fix and flip or to buy and hold and things along those lines. And at first it was working okay. And then over time, what I noticed is that my rate of response for my direct mail just consistently went down and down and down. And fewer people responded to my offers, and I was having a much more difficult time getting leads. Well, at the same time, too, online was starting to become a much more significant thing, and it's nowhere near as advanced, back then as it is now. But the fact of the matter is that it was starting to move in a positive direction, and it might have been another channel that I could explore, and direct mail wasn't working. All the other ways that I was trying to get out there, word of mouth, just simply weren't working. And I really didn't have a solution to drive consistent revenue into my business. So I went out, I bought a course for a couple $100 on how to do SEO and started implementing that in my business. And I went out and I did some keyword research, and I saw that people were looking for some very specific things, because nobody could qualify to buy a home and nobody could sell a home, but especially because they couldn't qualify to buy one, there were a lot of people looking for rent-to-own homes. And in fact, here in the state of Utah where I live, there's around 3,000 people a month typing in the keyword rent-to-own homes Utah. And I went out and found out that rent-to-own-homes-utah.com was available. And so I bought it, slapped a WordPress website up. It started ranking in a day. We certainly weren't getting any leads or anything along those lines, but I started noticing that we're getting traffic to the website. And then I sat down and I recorded this cheesy little video that said something to the effect of, if you want to rent to own a home, you've come to the right place. Put your information in the list below and we'll notify you anytime we get a new home that meets your criteria. And all of a sudden, we started getting opt-ins. And then the issue became, well, let's go out and start getting houses, right? And we were chasing down FSBOs, and we we're doing a variety of different things to buy homes from people. And in the meantime, I had 3 women sitting in the office whose literal job was to answer the phones, okay? And they would ask 3 questions. How's your credit? Good, bad, or ugly? What can you afford monthly? What can you put down? And we threw all those people in a database. And so anytime that we would pick up a new house, we'd go out, we'd email blast our database, we'd call maybe 5 or 10 of our top prospects, and we would get those homes occupied literally within 3 to 4 days, typically, with oftentimes $20,000 to $30,000 down on those properties. So we had very, very little risk in these transactions. Well, then the problem became, well, okay, we've got all of these buyers now, but we don't have enough houses. And so I started thinking about, okay, well, if I had to sell my house because I'm moving for a job relocation or because maybe I'm losing my home, right? I can't afford the monthly payments. What would I do? Well, if people knew about rent to own homes, they would do that. But the fact of the matter is they just didn't. And so what we then did was went back, we started researching out keywords again and noticed that there was about 8,000 people a month typing in the keyword property management Utah. And so I got thinking, well, why not start free property management Utah? Because we're getting this option consideration from these tenant buyers. We really don't need to collect a percentage of rents from the homeowners. And then we went out and we started educating these homeowners on the value or the difference between a lease option and a traditional rental agreement. And we were able to give them 100% of the rents, hence the free property management. And with an offer like free property management, and you can rent to buy our home with as little as $5,000 down, we had this perfect pairing. And when I ultimately got out of real estate because I hated it, it was a grind every single day. I just absolutely did not like the business model whatsoever. I loved doing the marketing. We had probably 300 homes that were actively, being rented out by tenant buyers, and some of them would close, and there was a few seller financing deals. But ultimately, I determined that I loved the marketing. I loved the creativity behind it. I loved learning about SEO. I loved learning about Google Ads. I loved applying all these different campaigns. And I kind of liked being a maverick a little bit in the industry. I loved that while most real estate agents were going out of business in droves, we were making really, really good money. And we actually had a lot of real estate agents that were approaching us saying, hey, we'd love to be able to take this big list of buyers that you have, go out, stick them with credit repair, do whatever we need to do to start pre-qualifying them. So next thing I know, I not only own a real estate investment company, but now I own a brokerage and a property management company. And I had about 6 different realtors that were working with me now to take all of these leads and go close them into traditional mortgages and traditional homes while we got a kickback from that. And so that's kind of my experience in terms of how I got started in the marketing. And then in about 2011, I started noticing that the rent-to-own market was, well, first of all, real estate was starting to correct itself again. The great, depression of the 2000s was moving on. And I saw kind of a finite life cycle to that particular business. I also really didn't enjoy doing the business, itself at that point. And so I went out and started job calls. One of our first clients was a contractor, a little company out of Ogden, Utah, does heating and air conditioning. And for the first few years of my business, doing mostly local search engine optimization, we worked with doctors and lawyers and all manner of businesses under the sun. And what really sold me on the blue collar is that, first of all, these were really just my kind of people. And, I actually grew up in an alcoholic home, have been doing some, 12-step and Al-Anon and different things along those lines for quite some time. And, let's be real about it. There's a lot of alcoholism in the blue collar industry, and no judgment, love all of you guys, but it's where I feel comfortable. It's where I feel at home. But the other thing that I really love about blue collar folks is that you guys work your ass off and you don't feel like you're entitled to a damn thing. I know that when I talk to a contractor and I talk to you about leads, you're not going to have any expectation that because you spent 10 years learning how to be a brain surgeon, that the world is going to beat a path to your door. You already know that in order to be successful, you need to get out there and market your butt off. You need to get out there and ask for referrals. You need to be wrapping your trucks, and you've got to go out and work. And that's just the reality, right? That is the reality of every business under the sun. But for some reason, blue collar people just inherently understand that, where white collar people and a lot of professionals, especially the very, very well paid ones, they just don't get it. And there's just so much entitlement there. And so, I'm fortunate that we now only work with contractors. We've quit working with doctors and dentists and lawyers years and years and years ago. And really, we've continued to stay predominantly in the heating and air conditioning and plumbing space because we do understand those verticals so well. Certainly, we understand electrical as well because, you usually have that trifecta, right, of heating, air, plumbing, and electrical. And then I started Allied Contractors about 3 years ago, and we've had some just incredible blow up success there in large part because, well, frankly, we've had a lead engine, through the whole thing. But for me, at least, and that's really what this podcast is about, it's about helping to elevate the industry. It's about being cheerleaders of the blue collar workforce, the backbone of the economy. Because let's be real here. I mean, real estate goes up, down, and the whole economy goes with it. And you guys really are at the forefront of all of this. And it is my personal mission and passion to support you in those efforts because I'm right here with you. So I wanted to share my experience of how I got into the marketing field, particularly because while we may not be in anything approaching the recession that we had back in 2007, 8, 9, that sort of thing, the fact of the matter is that we are in a downturn economically. And just like it was so important for me to be online during the throes of the last, economic meltdown that we had, it is equally important now for contractors to be online, to have a strong digital presence, and ultimately to really align themselves in such a way that they're going to be able to weather this storm. And one of the storms that you're going to have to weather is how to stay visible on Google, which is undoubtedly the largest search engine in the world. So let's talk then a little bit about what's happening with Google, why Google's so important, frankly, in the first place, and then really what you can do to try to stay ahead of the curve. First of all, Google is the kingmaker when it really comes to blue collar or contracting businesses. And the reason I say that is it has everything to do with intent. Facebook ads, that sort of thing, has gotten a lot of limelight here in recent years because it's the new, latest, greatest, whiz-bangy kind of problem or marketing channel, really. The problem with Facebook is that if I'm out on Facebook, I have no search intent whatsoever. And what I mean by that is that, I might have some interest in getting my kitchen remodels as an example. It's something I've been thinking about for a few years. And if all of a sudden some really well done ad pops up in front of me on Facebook for a kitchen remodeling contractor, I might even press the one button to give them all of my information. And then I'm going to go back to scrolling. I'm not in a position where I'm ready to make a decision today in terms of the quality of leads that can be had out there. The quality of most Facebook leads is pretty low because, again, there's just no real intent. Now, conversely, if I've been thinking about remodeling my kitchen for a while and I have been out searching on Google, how much does it cost to remodel my kitchen? How much does it cost to redo flooring in a kitchen, right? I've already spent time going through and doing all of my pre-buying information. And then I go out to Google and I type in general contractor near me or kitchen remodeler near me or kitchen remodeler in my city. At that point, I'm actually looking to get bids. I am ready to take that next step to make my kitchen remodel a reality. And because Google really owns the market on intent and searches with intent, those leads are always going to be better for home service contractors than any other leads under the sun, except probably referrals. And what I love about Google, and they made this change many, many, many years ago to the point that, now we all just kind of know that if you're on Google, the most important thing that we're going to look at is your reviews, right? And the reason that referral marketing works so well is because I'm leveraging the reputation that I have with somebody else in order to, give them a referral into somebody, right? So we trust the person who's making that referral. And so consequently, the referrals are going to close at a very, very high percentage. Well, years ago, when we were just doing Google ads or ranking websites on Google, but there was no Google places, there were no reviews online, nobody had that social proof or that way to be able to create trust with their prospective customers. And so Google came along and said, we're going to go ahead and start giving people the ability to rate your company. And what that did was it took word of mouth marketing in the best way that can be done online. It extended word of mouth onto the digital landscape. because even though it wasn't, say, my neighbor down the street or my big brother who was referring me into this contractor, I could go out and see, oh, look, this person's got 100 reviews. And I can go through and I can read, 6 or 7 or 8 of those reviews. In fact, it's been a long time since people do review statistics because now it's just a known thing. But way back when, they used to say that in order to be trusted on Google, or in order to be trusted on Yelp or any of these review type sites, you need to have at least 10 reviews, and that people are on average going to read 6 to 7 of those reviews. I think that still happens very much today. But the fact of the matter is that we are all so used to just looking at somebody's online reputation and weighting our decision based on whether or not they're a 4.2 or a 4.3 and above, that we don't even think about this stuff anymore. But this is all still baked into Google's system. And frankly, when it comes to generating lead flow for contractors, that's why they are absolutely still king. So I get asked all the time, where are my marketing dollars going to net the best return? And I'm here to tell you, especially you venture capitalists who might be watching this, that it's not ads. Google LSA has gotten a lot of notoriety here in the last few years because it takes Google's traditional ad system and makes it simple enough that you or I can actually use it without having to have a doctorate degree in the Google Ads platform. What I can tell you, though, is that when we've gone and worked with some very substantial companies who are running, candidly, many, many tens of thousands of dollars a month in marketing budget, what we are typically seeing with LSA or Google's local services ads is about, 500% to maybe as much as a 1,500% return on investment, right? So for every dollar I put in, I'm going to get about $5 to $15 back. Google Ads itself will actually do something, similar to that. And we're typically seeing about a 8-to-1 to maybe a 17-to-1 return on investment through Google Ads. And because there is so much customization in ads, it absolutely is going to be something where if you have the knowledge and the budget to really make it work, then you can really make ads perform. But what we have seen again and again and again with SEO on Google, right? Either Maps marketing, meaning we're trying to get in that Google Maps 3-pack, or organic. Either way, we're consistently seeing returns on investment anywhere between 5,000 to as much as 10,000% every single month. So what that means then is that every time you hand me $1, I'm going to hand you 50 to 100 back. And that is pretty typical. And if you'd like proof on this, what I'm not really big on is just touting my clients' results online to the whole world. But I do have case studies that show what those returns on investment are for a multi-location, 115 truck outfit. And I would be happy to share those. So you're welcome to reach out to me at adam@jobcalls.com. And as long as you're not press or media and you promise not to republish our case studies in that regard, I will happily prove my statement that SEO is still far and away the greatest return on investment out there. Now, SEO, it's challenging, just to be frank, because most people don't know how to do it really, really well. And it is a nothing sum game. And what I mean by that is that there can really only be 3 people in Google Maps. And for that matter, we all kind of know that those top 3 or 4 results on Google are really the ones that we want to look at. And if you're below the fold or for God forbid, the second page, you're just not going to get seen. So it is a longer term process to generate results from search engine optimization. But just like I was able to build a company that just was rapidly selling homes in a market where homes were unsellable, that's the power of SEO. And I see it again and again and again with my clients. Even with my own construction company, I mean, we're, just probably 2.5 years into marketing that business, and we're averaging sometimes over 100 calls a month for kitchen and bathroom models. And so much so that we've had to start to now actually teaming up with other contractors to help take off large percentages of our lead flow, because we're just generating more. It's like drinking from a fire hose, literally. And so a lot of what I end up doing with my clients is trying to create little filtering systems to turn that volume down, or say, okay, listen, rather than drink from a fire hose and try to take every lead, let's start to cherry pick those leads. And in my experience, a well-run SEO campaign along with Google's local services ads is probably enough to take many contractors to multiple seven figures in their business without ever touching an ad on Google or Facebook. So let's go ahead and talk about scaling for a minute then, because I know that's a hot topic for most people who are going to be interested in watching this broadcast, because it really is about, how do we scale from all stages of growth all the way to acquisition. Some of the biggest challenges that I see out there when it comes to scaling, and this is frankly why SEO is such a beautiful strategy, is that if you're a plumber, let's just say, and you're looking at having to go out and buy a $70,000 truck and throw another, $5,000-$6,000 wrap on that truck, right? And if you're not wrapping your trucks and you're stuck in that white van syndrome thing, let me tell you that the highest number of impressions that you're going to get as an HVAC or plumbing contractor is from your trucks. So get with the program, my friend. And no offense, but you are losing market share every single day if you don't have a tight brand that is easily recognizable in the marketplace. And with all of that said, however, and coming back to SEO, what I really love about it is because it does create that effect of trying to drink from a fire hose. And when you really get your SEO right and you're showing up in those top spots, the volume is just simply there. And let's be real, what most of us are concerned about when we're looking at either getting out of the field or continuing to expand is it's a pretty, you're looking at probably $100,000 plus to get a new truck on the road. And then you've got to consider too, that there's just not that much labor out there in the HVAC and plumbing space. And all of those, doctors and lawyers and people who thought that, we want our kids to be white collar and whatever else, it's astonishing to me to see them go out there with, $100,000 in student loans, and they're not able to make as much money as a plumber who's seasoned, 4 or 5 years into the business. And so for me, it's another big passion to get the trades back into schools and to have those channels available again and get away from this idea that we all need to be doctors and lawyers and that nobody should pick up a hammer or a wrench. But with all of that said, when I have so much volume coming in that I can start to actually cherry pick my deals, then it puts me in this very, very strategic position to go outfit another truck. And that's what we all really want at the end of the day, right? Is that we want to know that I've got enough lead flow coming in that if I go out and I spend $100,000 to outfit a truck and I bring on a $100,000 a year employee or $70,000, $80,000 a year employee, that we're going to have enough lead flow to keep them busy. And in my experience and what I've observed happen with the contractors that we've served over the years, is oftentimes they'll start out at 1 or 2 or 3 trucks, and we go out there and we do what we're going to do from an SEO perspective. They more often than not always have their word of mouth that they grew their business on in the first place. And as we get them into those positions to where they are now showing up prominently online, and regardless of what somebody types in on Google, chances are they're going to be found, because there's still this branding element that has to, the idea with branding, right, is that somebody needs to experience your brand 6 to 7 times before they're going to pick up the phone. And so, that's why you want to have kind of this omnipresence out there, right? And why Google ads on its own or Facebook ads on its own or even a billboard on its own is not sufficient enough to really generate the type of lead volume that you want to have. And the great thing about search engine optimization is it really provides that, because as I'm out there searching around, let's say that I'm looking to replace a water heater as an example, I might start by saying, how much does it cost to replace a water heater in Utah? Well, if I find an article from a plumber out there that talks about how much it costs to replace a water heater, I'm probably already going to give that person some credibility. And then if I'm driving down the freeway and I see a billboard for that same person, now I'm starting to recognize their brand a little bit more. And maybe a neighbor in my neighborhood is getting their plumbing worked on, and there's this really pretty truck down the road. I'm like, gosh, I feel like I've seen XYZ plumbing company out there. And then when they're ready to actually go out and replace their water heater and they go type in plumber near me and you pop up, guess what? You get the phone call. And in our experience, that happens so frequently enough and everything really does come back to Google. So in addition to obviously the fear of, if I go out and hire somebody, am I going to have enough volume to keep them busy, keep that truck on the road, and not have that be just an expense? There's this further reality that when I go out there and take over the online space. And I'm showing up very, very consistently in my market for all of those terms. I may not be the company that is spending the most amount of money on advertising, but all of a sudden I'm going to start to become the brand in my marketplace pretty quickly. And we've actually experienced that with several of the contractors that we work with. But one of them in particular is a pretty large plumbing, heating, air conditioning, electrical contractor out of Tulsa, Oklahoma. And when we started working with them, it was back in, kind of right before COVID. So 2019-ish. I would say, and we were able to go through and really do some pretty dramatic things there. And they had never really shown up that well in their marketplace, even though they did a lot of radio, they did a lot of television. So they were very well known in those circles. But when you went out and typed in plumbers near me, they were nowhere to be found. And so we were able to come in and get them to start showing up very, very consistently on Google. And if you're in the trades, if you're in HVAC, if you're in plumbing, you know how difficult it is to find good plumbers, to find good heating and air conditioning technicians that you can go slap in a van and know that they're going to be able to go out there and make, $300,000 minimum and up to $500,000 a year. I would say is a pretty good, quality metrics there. What we experienced with this particular contractor was when all of a sudden they were showing up in their marketplace, they started getting phone calls, not just from customers, but from plumbers. And because they were now the company that was showing up anytime any plumber went online and typed in plumbers near me or plumbers Tulsa or, those sorts of things, those plumbers started approaching my client because they were now the brand that was showing up the most on Google. And that's the other part of Google that's so fascinating is Google makes brands. If you are the king of Google, it will far outstripe and surpass any other money advertising that you dump into branding. And, I mentioned the trucks, and of course that's a really, really big deal. But what was very unique and special about this situation with this one particular client was that they went out and became the brand in their local marketplace. All of a sudden they had all of these plumbers who were working for their competitors that started reaching out to them and wanted to come and work for them. Now, because it was COVID time at this time, so 2020, 2021, and supply chain issues were all sorts of problematic, they couldn't get new trucks. And so what started happening then is they started looking at these, 100-ish or so trucks that they had on the road, and particularly in the plumbing space, I want to say they had about 65 of them or so that were in plumbing. They couldn't get new trucks. Otherwise, they would have just happily outfitted new trucks, had the volume to outfit new trucks, and could have done so. And so what they started doing was looking at the performance of all of their plumbers, and they let go of their bottom 20% of plumbers and brought in these top performing plumbers from their marketplace and slapped them in those trucks and was able to completely eliminate their underperforming, employees. So there's real power in branding and in showing up on Google, especially where we are in such a hiring crunch. And many of you are out there, frankly, training your own technicians. When you become the king on Google and you become the brand that is showing up consistently in your local space, you get noticed. And you get noticed not just by your prospective customers, but also by people who would really, really like to work for the best in the business. So wrapping up, we've been talking a lot about Google. We've been talking about the job calls story here just a little bit. And really, I think if we've been talking about anything, we've been talking about how to build a brand and how to really leverage Google to take that brand and accelerate it in such a way that you're going to quickly become the market leader in your space. We've talked about how that can help not only in terms of customer acquisition, having the surety to be able to outfit a new truck or two or three, and then also, how that can help out with this hiring crunch that is so prevalent, frankly, in the skilled trades and in the construction world in general right now. In future episodes, we're going to be really diving into more of the nitty-gritty of this. And in fact, in our next episode, I'll be talking about the plan, if you will, on Google for 2024 and some of the significant changes in the industry that we are seeing. Because like I said, this market is reminding me a little bit of what it was like when we were in this serious economic downturn. And I think some of those same marketing principles are absolutely relevant now as fewer and fewer of the contractors that we work with are seeing their word of mouth and traditional forms of advertising become less and less effective, not unlike they were for me when I was doing, direct mail in droves back in 2007, 2008, that sort of thing. Wherever you're buying your podcasts, Spotify or Apple or YouTube, please subscribe. And for that matter, the subscription link for our newsletter is in the description of this podcast. So you can join us there for timely updates on the home services marketing ecosystem anyway. So if you found any value in this initial podcast and you'd like to be notified when we have new topics, please go ahead and subscribe to our newsletter. That is something that is going to be something that really is going to help you be able to build your business here over the next several years. And again, my name is Adam Loveridge with Job Calls, and thank you so much for listening to the Home Services Marketing Podcast, Growth to Acquisition, and I look forward to catching you next time.